I was holding a bowl of warm soup, my hands still aching from stirring it for hours. I turned with a smile when she called my name, but instead of words, her hand came flying across my cheek. "You're not a guest here," she spat. "You're help. Start acting like it." In that moment, something inside me shattered, and something else began to wake up. My name is Miriam Rose. I'm 65 years old, though some mornings, my knees argue I'm older. I was a wife for 41 years. A mother for 40. And for most of those years, I lived by one simple rule. Family first. I believed in birthday cakes from scratch, handwritten letters tucked into lunchboxes, and showing up, always without being asked. I gave everything I had to my husband, my son, and later, his family. And I did it gladly, thinking love was something you proved by how much of yourself you gave away. But no one tells you what to do when giving becomes expected. When kindness becomes obligation. When your warmest gestures are repaid with cold silences, unspoken rules, and doors that close just a little too quickly behind you. I moved in with my son thinking I was coming home. Instead, I walked straight into a lesson I never imagined I'd have to learn at this age. And it all started with a slap. 2 weeks. That's all it had been. Just 14 days since I folded up my life into boxes marked kitchen, books, and memories. I sold the house my late husband and I built brick by brick. A quiet little home with lilac bushes along the fence, the kind that bloomed in spring just like he promised they would. Every flower felt like a whispered, "I told you so," from him. My son, Daniel, said it was for the best. "Mom, it's too much space for you now. Come stay with us. You shouldn't be alone." He said it so gently, so sincerely. And I believed him. He was my only child, my pride. The boy I swaddled in the middle of the night when fevers raged. The boy I cheered for in muddy soccer fields. The man I helped raise after we lost his father too soon. I'd never asked much of him. Just that he stay close. Just that he remember. So I moved into their spacious house in the suburbs. A gift, I had thought. The guest room had a little window that caught the morning sun. I brought my old rocking chair with me, the one with carved roses on its arms. It creaked the same way it did when I used to sing lullabies. The room smelled like paint and lavender. New beginnings. I hadn't even unpacked fully when things started to shift. First it was subtle. "Could you grab Mia from school, Mom? We didn't get a chance to meal prep. You're home, right?" I didn't mind. I liked being helpful. I liked feeling useful. But by day 4, I found myself doing all the dishes. By day 7, I was folding their laundry. Socks I didn't wear, underwear I didn't own. By day 10, Olivia, my daughter-in-law, began leaving sticky notes on the fridge with little instructions. Vacuum carpets. Use vinegar for the windows, not Windex. Dinner by 7:30? And I still smiled. Because that's what mothers do. That's what we've always done. We bend, shrink, adapt. I told myself, if I stay out of the way, if I make myself useful, they'll be grateful. I'll be loved. But nothing prepared me for that Thursday. It was an ordinary afternoon. Mia had come home from school cranky, so I made her favorite, tomato bisque with tiny star pasta. I hummed to myself in the kitchen, watching the soup bubble gently, the scent reminding me of winters past when Daniel would bring his friends over, dripping in snow and laughter. I was setting the bowl on the table when Olivia walked in. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor. She stopped, looked at the soup, and then back at me. "Did you use the cream from the top shelf?" she asked, her tone already sharp. "Yes," I said gently. "I didn't see any other." "That was for my cake," she snapped, cutting me off. I opened my mouth to explain, to apologize, when suddenly she stepped forward and slapped me. It wasn't the kind of slap that left bruises. It was the kind that steals breath. The kind that makes the world go still. My face burned where her palm had landed, but it wasn't the pain that made me dizzy. It was the humiliation. You need to learn your place, she said coldly. You're not a guest. You're help. So stop acting like a princess and do what we brought you here for. Brought me here for. As if I had no name. No history. No blood ties. Just some housekeeper they'd inherited. I don't remember what I said, because I didn't say anything. I turned, slowly, quietly, and walked to my room. My knees shook with every step. My hands trembled as I shut the door behind me. I sat in my rocking chair, heart pounding in my chest, the soup still warm on the table outside. I stared out the window. It was a gray day. Rain threatened the sky. I wondered if they would even notice I'd stopped humming. I thought about my husband. What would he say if he were here? Would he be furious? Protective? Or would he have seen this coming, when I was too blinded by love to notice? I thought about all the birthdays. All the sacrifices. The time I handed Daniel the keys to our second car when he and Olivia were struggling. The check I wrote when they needed help with the down payment for this very house. The necklace I sold when Mia was born, just so I could cover the nursery. Had I really been this disposable? The next morning, I pretended nothing happened. I made my tea, fed the orange cat who wandered near the back porch each morning, wore my blue cardigan, the one with missing buttons. Then I walked 3 blocks to the small cafe I'd passed so many times before. And that's where I saw her. Lillian. We used to volunteer together at the church when our boys were toddlers. She still wore that same fire-red lipstick and smelled like gardenias. She took one look at me and said, "What happened?" I must have looked worse than I thought. I didn't lie. I didn't sugarcoat. I told her everything. She didn't gasp. She didn't pity me. She just took a long sip of her tea and said softly, "You don't owe them your silence." She told me about her own story, how her son and daughter-in-law tried to trick her into signing over property rights. How she found a lawyer, a young woman named Elena Marquez, who helped her set things right. Before we parted, she slipped a card into my hand. Elena Marquez, Elder Law, Advocacy and Protection. I stared at the name the whole way home. It felt dangerous. It felt like opening a door I had kept locked for too long. But it also felt like hope. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to begin. The silence after something like that isn't empty. It's heavy. It hangs in the air, settling over every chair, every hallway, every clink of a spoon against a teacup. And in that house, silence meant survival. After the slap, Olivia didn't mention it. Not the next day. Not the day after that. Neither did Daniel. He never asked why I hadn't come out for dinner, or why I stopped greeting him at the door with a kiss on the cheek. My son, my only child, moved through the house like a man wearing blinders. He talked about traffic, his new client at work, Mia's school fundraiser. He talked about everything. Except what mattered. I think deep down he knew. He always did. He just didn't want to look too closely. The weekend came and went. I stayed mostly in my room, folding and refolding clothes in my drawer, brushing the same patch of carpet over and over with my old slippers, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was this really my life now? On Monday, I finally called the number Lillian gave me. I held the phone to my ear, heart pounding like I was doing something wrong. But the woman who answered, Elena, had a voice that made me feel seen within the first 5 seconds. "Mrs. Rose," she said gently, after I stumbled through the first few words, "you don't need to justify your pain. Start where it hurts." So I did. I told her everything. About the move. The manipulation. The way I'd been slowly erased from the family portrait I thought I belonged in. And when I told her about the slap, she didn't react with horror. She said something far more powerful. That was the moment they showed you exactly who they believe you are. And now, we get to decide who you want to be. I sat there in the little sunlit corner of my room, phone pressed to my cheek, and wept. Not because I was broken, but because someone had finally said like I wasn't alone anymore. Over the next few days, we spoke several times. She asked me gentle questions at first, then firmer ones. Do you have any proof that you contributed to the down payment of the house? Yes. I wrote them a check. I still have the bank record. Did you gift it to them, or was it a loan? They said they'd pay me back within a year. It's been 5. I never saw a penny. She didn't say, "I told you so." She said, "Let's start documenting everything." That week, I started keeping a small notebook under my pillow. I wrote down every task Olivia asked me to do, every snide comment, every time Daniel looked away instead of stepping up. I logged the hours I spent cooking, cleaning, helping with Mia's homework. I wrote it all down. It was strange how writing made me feel stronger. Like my pain had finally found a witness, even if that witness was just ink on paper. One afternoon, Olivia burst into my room without knocking. She held a small pile of laundry. "These need to be washed on cold. Daniel's shirts." I looked up from my notebook and met her eyes. For a moment, just a flicker, she paused. Like she'd caught sight of something unfamiliar. Maybe it was the way I didn't jump to my feet, or maybe it was how calm I looked with the pen still in my hand. I nodded slowly. "I'll do it after I finish writing." She smirked. "Writing what? A diary?" I smiled. "Just a little. Something like that." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. But I could feel it. The shift. She wasn't sure what I was up to, and that made her nervous. Daniel came home early that Friday. It used to be something that brought me joy, hearing his keys in the door, the familiar way he'd say, "Mom, you won't believe the traffic today." But now, even his voice felt unfamiliar. "Hey," he said, standing awkwardly at my door. "You have a second?" I nodded and closed my notebook. He stepped in like he didn't know how to be in his own house. He glanced at my bookshelf, the old quilt folded at the foot of the bed, the framed photo of me and his father on our wedding day. "Olivia said you've been distant." I let that hang there. Then he added, "She's worried you're not happy here." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that what she told you?" He shifted. "Look, I know she can be direct, but she means well." I studied my son's face. The boy I raised. The man who once held my hand after his first heartbreak. And I saw something behind his eyes. Not cruelty, not malice, but weakness. The kind that lets cruelty live in peace. "I'm not here to be managed, Daniel," I said quietly. "And I didn't come here to serve anyone." His mouth opened. Closed again. "I gave you this house when you couldn't afford it," I added. "I paid for Mia's private school. I babysit, clean, cook. And for that, I was slapped." His eyes widened. "She told you?" "No," I said. "You never asked." Silence fell like a curtain. Then, without a word, he turned and left the room. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for making him uncomfortable. That night, I called Elena again. "I want to know what my rights are," I said. We began the paperwork that week. A letter of demand for repayment of the original loan I'd given them. A cease and desist regarding verbal and physical harassment. We documented every financial contribution I'd made over the last 5 years. Gifts, transfers, support payments. I had never spoken in legal terms before. But Elena made it feel like a language I could learn. Like dignity could be spelled out in clauses and signed in ink. We also discussed the possibility of me moving out. Not out of shame, but as a declaration. Because I didn't need to live in a house where I wasn't respected. I had options. I had savings. I had me. It was the first time in years that I remembered that I had myself. Not just a role, not just mom, or grandma, or helper. But Miriam. A few days later, something happened that changed everything. I was in the backyard watering the flower bed. Olivia had guests over, a few friends from her book club. I overheard laughter through the open kitchen window. Then a voice said, "You're so lucky your mother-in-law does all the housework." Olivia's reply? It was a dagger. She should be grateful we even took her in. What else was she going to do? Die alone in that dusty little house of hers? Laughter again. Sharp. Cruel. Dismissive. I stood there, hose still running, water soaking my slippers. And for once, I didn't cry. I smiled. Because in that moment, I knew what I was about to do wasn't petty. Wasn't dramatic. It was survival. It was justice. It was mine. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The house was silent, wrapped in a blanket of pre-dawn stillness. The only sound was the creak of the floor beneath my feet and the slow breath of the world outside beginning to stretch itself awake. I slipped into the kitchen and brewed a pot of tea. The same jasmine blend I used to drink with my husband on early mornings like this. I sat at the breakfast table alone, listening to the soft whistle of the kettle, remembering the quiet mornings that felt like peace instead of exile. On the table in front of me was a folder. Pale blue. Clean. Inside it, the papers Elena had sent over. Letters. Notices. Legal documents with my name at the top. Miriam Rose. My name. In ink. In bold. I ran my fingers over the letters like they were sacred. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. Not as someone's mother, not as a free babysitter, not as a nuisance, but as a person. A woman with rights, with boundaries, with a story that deserved protection. By the time the sun poured into the kitchen, Olivia walked in, half asleep in a silk robe. "Oh," she said, catching sight of me. "You're up early." I closed the folder and sipped my tea. "Old habits," I murmured. She poured her coffee without another word, humming a song I didn't recognize. And for a moment, it felt like a regular morning. Two women in a kitchen, surrounded by warmth and familiarity. But I knew better now. This wasn't a home. It was a masquerade. A performance of family where I played the servant in the wings, silent and obedient. Not anymore. Later that day, I had a video call with Elena. She appeared on the screen in her small office, hair tied in a neat bun, eyes sharp but kind. "I've drafted everything," she said. "All I need is your signature." I hesitated. "Is it okay to be afraid?" I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. She smiled. "Miriam, being afraid means you're aware of what's at stake. Being brave means you still act." So I signed. Page after page, I put my name down. I took ownership of my life in pen and paper, one stroke at a time. We mailed the documents that same afternoon. One certified envelope addressed to Daniel and Olivia. One copy for my records. One filed with her office. I didn't tell them right away. I wanted the silence to build, the same silence they'd weaponized against me. I now turned into anticipation. They didn't know a storm was brewing inside the woman they thought was invisible. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. It was Sunday. The day Olivia always had her family brunch. She made a show of it. Fresh waffles, imported fruit, cloth napkins. All for Instagram, of course. Daniel sat at the head of the table scrolling through his phone, barely looking up. Mia played with her cereal. Uninterested. Olivia smiled too brightly at her friends, her tone sweet like syrup, until the doorbell rang. I didn't move. "Can you get that?" she asked, sipping her mimosa. "I think it's for you," I said quietly. She frowned and walked toward the door. I heard the envelope drop into her hands before I saw her face. Confusion. Then dawning. Then panic. "What is this?" she barked, waving the document like it had burned her fingers. Daniel looked up finally, blinking. "What's going on?" She shoved the envelope at him. "It's from her lawyer." His face paled as he opened the packet and scanned the pages. Mom, he said, as if reading my name there made me a stranger. I stood up slowly, placing my napkin down. It's a formal request, I said evenly. For repayment of the loan I gave you 5 years ago. I have proof of the amount, the date, and your promise to pay it back. Olivia's mouth hung open. You're suing us? No, I replied calmly. Not yet. This is simply a notice. A boundary. Daniel looked helpless. But we're family. Yes, I said. And family doesn't slap their elders. Or treat them like maids. Or lie. The room went still. Even Mia looked up. You were supposed to help us, Olivia said, her voice rising. I tilted my head. I did. 4 years. Quietly. Generously. Willingly. And you mistook my silence for weakness. Daniel stood. Let's not do this here. Why not? I asked, heart pounding but voice steady. This is the house I helped you buy. The daughter I helped raise. The marriage I supported when no one else did. And this is how you repay me? No one spoke. You took advantage of my kindness, I said, looking at both of them now. But that ends today. And with that, I walked away from the table, from the performance, from the prison of unspoken expectations. Back to my room, where I smiled. That night, I packed a suitcase. Not out of fear, but preparation. Because something had shifted, and we all knew it. I wasn't leaving just yet, but I wanted them to see that I could. I wanted them to understand that I was no longer trapped. That the woman in the corner bedroom had remembered her worth. Daniel knocked on my door once that night. I didn't answer. The following morning, something surprising happened. Mia came into my room, holding one of my scarves. She was only 10, but she looked older in that moment, her face serious, her small hands clutching the blue fabric. Grandma, she said, are you mad at Mommy? I looked at her. Really looked at her. Her eyes were wide, uncertain, like she was trying to make sense of the tension in the walls. I'm not mad, sweetheart, I said gently. I'm just remembering who I am. She tilted her head. Who are you? I smiled and pulled her onto my lap. Someone who forgot for a while. But not anymore. She hugged me tightly, and I felt a flicker of something I thought I'd lost. Connection. A reminder of why I fought in the first place. Not to punish, but to protect myself. To reclaim dignity. To make sure no woman, not even a grandmother, ever forgets that she deserves respect. Later that week, I received a letter from Olivia's lawyer. It was brief. Defensive. But it confirmed one important thing. They were taking me seriously now. Elena called me the next morning. Congratulations, she said. You've reclaimed your narrative. But I wasn't done yet. I didn't just want repayment. I wanted distance. I wanted healing. I wanted peace. So I began the process of looking for a place of my own. A small apartment with sunlight, a tiny garden balcony, maybe even a cat. Something mine. Something safe. Because living with people who pretend to love you while slowly dismantling your spirit, that's not family. That's a lesson. And I had learned mine. You don't realize how much you've given until you begin to take it back. That week, I sat on the floor of my room, the one they called the guest room, but never treated like one, surrounded by folders, envelopes, and memory-stained receipts. I wasn't just packing clothes now. I was unpacking years of sacrifice. I pulled out old bank statements, highlighted transfers I'd made to Daniel and Olivia when they were newly married. I remembered each one vividly. The time their heater broke midwinter and they had no savings. The time Mia was hospitalized with pneumonia and the insurance didn't cover the full bill. The time Olivia wanted to enroll in a business course online and Daniel had lost his job. Every time I said yes. Not once did I ask for it back. Not once did I attach strings. I gave because I believed in love that wasn't transactional. I gave because that's what mothers do. They build lifeboats out of their own wood when their children's ships start to sink. But the moment I stopped giving freely, the moment I asked to be seen, heard, respected, suddenly I became a problem. A burden. A guest overstaying her welcome. That hurt more than the slap. One night, while organizing documents in my drawer, I found a letter my husband wrote me 20 years ago. It was tucked inside an old cookbook, of all places, between recipes for apricot scones and minestrone soup. In his careful looping script, he had written, "If anything ever happens to me, take care of Daniel. But not at the cost of losing yourself. You're more than a mother. Don't forget that." I cried holding that letter. Because I had forgotten. For years, I allowed my role as a mother to eclipse the woman inside me. I wore devotion like armor and let guilt be my compass. I thought aging meant becoming invisible, that my needs were somehow less urgent, less valid. But the truth is, growing older doesn't mean growing smaller. It means growing wiser. And wise women don't beg to be respected. I found a listing online that same week. A modest one-bedroom apartment about 10 minutes from town. It had a small balcony, just big enough for 2 chairs and a potted rose bush. It overlooked a quiet street with a row of oak trees that turned gold in the fall. I scheduled a visit for the following Monday. I didn't tell Daniel or Olivia. I didn't owe them that anymore. Meanwhile, things at the house had turned cold. Daniel barely looked at me. He came home late. Left early. Olivia, on the other hand, was louder than ever, clanging pots in the kitchen, stomping through the hallway, reminding me with every glance that I was no longer welcome. I overheard her one afternoon whispering into the phone, "She's trying to make us look bad. Imagine the nerve, acting like we're the villains. After all we've done for her." All they've done for me? The gall of it. But I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I didn't run into battle. Because I had already won. The moment I chose to protect my peace over their approval, I had stepped into power. Let them talk. Let them twist the story. The truth didn't need noise. It needed action. Monday came. I took the bus across town to meet the landlord, a kind widow named Mrs. Farah who offered me tea before the tour. Her apartment smelled like cinnamon and softwood. The curtains fluttered in the breeze like they were dancing. I fell in love instantly. "This one just opened up," she said, unlocking the door to the unit. The last tenant was a retired teacher. Lived here for 10 years. The moment I stepped inside, I knew. The space was small but full of light. The walls were a soft peach color, the floor old hardwood. There was a little breakfast nook by the window. A built-in bookshelf. Even a washing machine tucked into a cabinet. It wasn't grand. It wasn't polished. But it felt like mine. I signed the lease on the spot. Then walked out into the street and breathed. Not just air. Freedom. Back at the house, I kept the news to myself. There was still one thing I wanted to do. Not for revenge, but for closure. I sat down that evening and wrote a letter to Daniel. Not to Olivia. To my son. I didn't shout or scold. I wrote with the same tenderness I used when tucking him into bed as a child. "Dear Daniel, I don't know when I stopped being your mother and started being your obligation. But somewhere along the way, I think you forgot who I was. Not just the woman who gave you life, but the woman who protected it, funded it, celebrated it. I gave you everything I had, not for applause or payback, but because I loved you. All I ever asked for in return was kindness. Dignity. A place in your life that didn't feel like charity. Instead, I was erased in slow, quiet ways, until even I began to doubt whether I belonged. But I've remembered now. And I forgive you. Not because you've asked for it, but because I no longer want to carry what doesn't serve me. I'll be moving out by the end of the week. I've found a place that welcomes me. A place where I am not help, but a person. Please tell me I love her. and that my door will always be open to her. Take care of your family. I'll be taking care of mine. Starting with me. Mom, I sealed the letter and left it on his pillow. By Thursday, my things were packed. 2 suitcases. 1 box of books. And a heart that no longer trembled in silence. As I wheeled my bags down the hallway, Olivia passed me near the stairs. She didn't speak. She looked at my luggage, then at me, and scoffed. Running away, she muttered. I met her eyes, calm as still water. No, I said. I'm choosing peace. She opened her mouth to reply, but I didn't wait to hear it. Some people don't deserve the last word. Daniel wasn't home when I left. Maybe that was for the best. It saved us both the pain of pretending we still knew how to be mother and son. But Mia ran down the stairs just as I reached the door. Grandma! Wait. She threw her arms around me, eyes brimming with tears. Don't forget me, she whispered. I kissed her forehead. Never, my angel. You have my phone number, right? She nodded. Then you can visit me any time. We'll bake cookies and plant flowers. And I'll teach you all the things your mom's too busy to know. She laughed softly. And that laugh carried me all the way to my new life. The cab pulled away from the house that used to hold my world. I didn't look back. Because I wasn't going that way. The first morning in my new apartment, I woke up to the sound of birds. Not slamming doors, not clattering pans, not hushed arguments. Just bird song, soft and bright, like a welcome. For a long moment, I didn't move. I just lay in bed and listened. The walls around me were bare, my suitcase still zipped by the door, but this place already felt more like home than anything I'd felt in years. I made myself a small breakfast, toast, eggs, tea, and ate it on the balcony. The sun was gentle, the breeze warm. Across the street, an old man was watering his garden. A little girl rode her scooter down the sidewalk, her pigtails flying. For the first time in a very, very long time, I exhaled. Not because someone else needed me. Not because I had something to prove. But because I was free. The days that followed were quiet, but not lonely. I unpacked slowly. Hung up my curtains. Arranged my books on the shelf. Framed a few old photos. Me and my husband, a baby Daniel in my arms, one of Mia on her 5th birthday, her mouth covered in frosting. I kept that last one on the windowsill. A reminder that love could still grow, even from cracked soil. Elena called to check in. The letter's been received, she said. They've hired a lawyer. It's all moving. I didn't ask for updates after that. Because truth be told, I didn't care anymore about the money. I'd already won. They couldn't take anything more from me. Not my pride. Not my name. Not my peace. Everything they tried to steal, I had taken back. Quietly, completely. A week after I moved in, someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Daniel. He looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes. His posture slack, like he'd been carrying guilt that finally began to weigh enough to matter. Hi, Mom. I didn't speak. I stepped aside and let him in. He walked slowly, taking in the small space, the worn rug, the flowers on the windowsill. You okay? He asked. I am now, I said simply. He nodded and sat down at the tiny table. I read your letter, he said. Twice. I poured us tea. Set the cups down. Waited. I'm sorry, he finally said. And I believed him. But apologies are only as strong as what comes after. I didn't know, he continued. I mean, I knew things weren't perfect, but I didn't think it was that bad. Because you didn't want to know, I replied. He looked down. You let her slap me, Daniel. And you did nothing. His shoulders slumped. I didn't know how to confront it, he admitted. Then you chose comfort over courage. He nodded slowly. There was no anger in my voice. Just truth. And sometimes, The truth is louder when it's calm. I won't come back, I said. Don't ask me to. This is my home now. He looked up, eyes glassy. I'm not asking you to come back, he said. I just wanted to say, I was wrong. I believed that too. But forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. It means release. I reached across the table and took his hand. I love you, I said. But I love me too. And I won't lose myself again. Not even for you. He nodded. And in that quiet moment, I saw the boy I raised. Not the man who forgot me, but the child who once cried in my lap when he skinned his knee. I hope Mia visits, I added. She's the best piece of us. She will, he said. If you'll have her. Always. He stood then. Took one last look around. I'm proud of you, he whispered. I smiled. I'm proud of me too. And just like that he left. Not as a villain. Not as a stranger. But as a son who still had some growing to do. 3 weeks later, Mia came to visit. She brought me wildflowers and a small pink notebook. So you can keep writing, she said. I laughed and pulled her into a hug. You're the only person who's never made me feel small. We baked together that afternoon. Laughed over burnt cookies. She told me stories about school, about how Olivia had joined a new yoga studio and seemed more tired than usual. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. Some stories aren't mine to carry anymore. When she left, she kissed my cheek and whispered, I wish you were still in the house. I cupped her face gently. You don't need a big house to feel at home, I said. You just need love. She smiled. Then your apartment feels bigger than ours. And with that, she skipped down the hallway and into the elevator, sunlight catching her curls like gold. That night, I sat on my balcony again, sipping tea, blanket wrapped around my shoulders. I looked up at the stars, at the soft winking lights above, and thought about all the women like me. Women who gave and gave until they disappeared inside their families. Women who swallowed disrespect because they were taught to be silent. Women who mistook endurance for love, and sacrifice for belonging. To them, I say this. You are not a guest in your own life. You are not the help. You are the home. And if they cannot see that, walk. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman can do is leave the room she built and build her own. I didn't need applause. I didn't need permission. I just needed one room, one window, one quiet truth to hold. I was never just someone's mother-in-law. I was Miriam Rose. And I had finally come home.